Ukraine killed 352,000 Russian troops in 2025. BBC News Russian has been counting Russian war losses together with independent outlet Media Zona and a group of volunteers since February 2022. We keep a list of named individuals whose deaths we were able to confirm using official reports, newspapers, social media, and new memorials and graves. The real death toll is believed to be much higher, and military experts we have consulted believe our analysis of cemeteries, war memorials, and obituaries might represent 45–65% of the total. That would put the number of Russian deaths at between 243,000 and 352,000. January 01, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And that shocking number we just dropped.
That's our starting point.
It really is. Today we're going to cover the true, crushing cost of the war in 2025, the leaked peace deal that might structurally be worse than continuing the war.
And that's not an exaggeration.
No, it's not. And then there's the dangerous nuclear missile deployment that just raises the strategic stakes across all of Europe.
Right. So we're taking the stack of sources you provided, and we've got casualty data, leaked diplomatic frameworks, and some critical strategic intel.
And our mission, as always, is to cut through the noise.
Exactly. We're going to reveal the profound costs, the deliberate manipulations, and the long-term risks that really define the end of 2025.
So where do we even begin with all this?
What stands out immediately, and what we have to unpack first, is just how fast Russian losses accelerated in 2025.
The speed of it, yeah.
And it wasn't random. The losses spiked specifically around key diplomatic talks. We also need to dig into the surprising demographic profile of the soldiers who are really bearing this burden.
And that ties right into the second part, doesn't it? We have to analyze the huge structural weaknesses in this leaked 28-point U.S.-Russia peace proposal. Critics are, I think rightly, worried this isn't a path to peace. It actually seems to threaten Ukraine's core sovereignty.
And it intentionally binds any kind of ceasefire to completely unrelated global geopolitical issues that could drag on for years. It's a mess.
A deliberate mess.
I think so. Then finally, we'll get to the hard military escalation. We have confirmation of the nuclear-capable Oreshnik IRBM in Belarus.
The intermediate-range ballistic missile.
Right. And this is all happening alongside a serious crisis in international law, specifically around the Mine Ban Treaty. So yeah, we have a lot to cover.
Okay, let's unpack this. We absolutely have to start with the sheer scale of the human cost. That number we opened with, the estimate of up to 352,000 Russian deaths.
It's almost impossible to comprehend.
It is, and that's derived from the incredible tracking done by the BBC and Media Zona. They have 156,000 confirmed, named Russian dead by December 19th, 2025. I mean, it's a truly devastating figure.
And what's so critical for you to understand is not just the total, but the rate, the speed of the losses. Our sources show they grew faster in 2025 than at any other point in the war.
By how much?
The number of published soldier obituaries jumped by shocking 40% compared to the year before. 40%.
Wow. But the pattern in those losses, that tells the real story, doesn't it? It wasn't a steady climb.
Not at all. That casualty rate peaked sharply in October and November.
Just as the diplomatic talks were heating up.
Exactly. They were averaging 322 obituaries published per day. I mean, that's double the average we saw in 2024.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the timing is, well, it's deeply revealing, isn't it?
It's chillingly clear. October and November were precisely when the U.S. presented its 28-point peace proposal, and that planned U.S.-Russia summit was suddenly shelved.
So the strategic motive becomes obvious.
The Kremlin views these catastrophic losses, these high-cost attacks, for even tiny territorial gains, as leverage. They see it as a way to influence the political negotiations with the U.S.
It's literally treating human life as a bargaining chip on a geopolitical table.
It is.
And when we look at the cost versus the gain, the assessment from the Institute for the Study of War, the ISW, it's just damning.
What did they find?
Their analysis shows Russian forces sustained at least 83 casualties for every single square kilometer they managed to capture in 2025. 83 lives.
For a single square kilometer, that's an absolutely horrifying attrition rate for what are, essentially negligible battlefield successes.
So how are they even sustaining this?
Well, this specific strategy relies on changing who is fighting. Demographically, the burden is falling incredibly hard on rural Russia.
I saw that. 67% of the confirmed dead came from small towns and villages. places with fewer than 100,000 people.
Right, and those areas account for less than half the country's total population.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the impact on these specific regional communities. It's profound, and it's going to last for generations.
And we're also seeing a huge shift in recruitment, right? The reliance on so-called volunteers.
People who signed a contract after the full-scale invasion started.
And that group is now, what, 1 in 3 deaths in 2025, up from just 15% before.
That's right. It points to a clear shift away from professional soldiers and toward, let's be honest, individuals who are either coerced or economically incentivized to sign these short-term contracts.
This strategy is really leaning on economic desperation and, crucially, the penal system.
Absolutely. The case study of Murat Mukashev just illustrates this tragic dynamic perfectly.
Can you walk us through that one?
Sure. Mukashev was an activist. He openly condemned the invasion.
Okay.
Then he was charged with drug dealing, sentenced to 10 years in a high-security penal colony. His friends say the charges were so heavy he really felt he had no choice.
So he was pressured into signing up?
Exactly. He signed his contract in November 2024. He was reportedly told the war would end quickly. He died just 7 months later, in June 2025, fighting in an assault squad in the Kharkiv region.
So he died on the gamble of a quick political solution that just never came for him?
That is the human price of this attrition strategy. But the thing is, this whole forced generation push, it's barely sustainable for the Kremlin.
The numbers don't work out.
Not at all. The Ukrainian commander-in-chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, he estimated Russia recruited about 406,000 personnel in 2025.
But their total losses were 410,000 or even more.
So they're basically treading water, barely managing to replace the staggering number of people who are losing.
Given those risks, the high casualties, is this strategy even sustainable into 2026? Or is Putin just buying time?
He is definitely buying time, but the system is already breaking. It's forcing these mandatory, very risky policy changes.
Like the mobilization of reservists.
Right. Putin's new decrees, compulsory mobilization of active reservists, which the ISW calls domestically risky. It threatens the social contract with the Russian population.
The one that says you can tolerate the war as long as it doesn't personally touch you.
Exactly. And to handle the immense bureaucratic mess, he also signed a transition to a year-round conscription cycle in 2026, targeting another 261,000 people. This is a massive shift toward militarizing the whole society.
And as the human cost gets bigger and the domestic pressure grows, we see the inevitable next step, information control.
Of course.
We saw it so blatantly in late December 2025. Nearly 70,000 court records concerning missing soldiers, families trying to declare them dead, they just vanished.
After a technical update.
Right, a technical update. It is so hard to see that as anything other than a deliberate attempt to erase the magnitude of the losses from public view.
And that domestic pressure, the need to hide the numbers, it leads us directly into how they're trying to manage this diplomatically.
Okay, let's shift to this leaked 28-point U.S.-Russia peace proposal. This has generated some scathing critique.
That's putting it mildly. Kiev and many European capitals have called the draft structurally pro-Russian.
The structural messiness is what just jumps out immediately. I mean, take the very first point, point 1. Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed.
Right.
Why would you put that in a treaty? Why would a globally recognized sovereign nation need its sovereignty confirmed?
That language is so problematic. It implies Ukraine's sovereignty is currently in question. It basically validates Russia's entire justification for the aggression in the first place.
So the sources recommend just deleting it.
Just get rid of it. Including, it is effectively handing Moscow a political win by implicitly acknowledging their narrative before you even get to point 2.
And the danger gets worse when we look at the most critical part, the security guarantees. Point 5 says Ukraine will get reliable security guarantees. The European counterproposal suggested changing reliable to robust.
As if that fixes it.
Right. Swapping one vague adjective for another equally vague adjective doesn't solve the core problem.
Which is that there's no definition. Both versions leave the guarantees completely undefined. Who provides them, what specific actions trigger them, what's the timeline? It's all just empty words.
It's a statement of intent, not a guarantee of protection.
And Ukraine can't rely on that to prevent future aggression. It's worthless.
The proposal also steps way over the line into Ukrainian domestic affairs, doesn't it? It completely constrains its sovereignty.
You're talking about point 25.
Yeah, Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. Now look, post-war elections are necessary, obviously, but imposing a specific timeline on a sovereign nation.
It constrains the very sovereignty that point 1 supposedly confirms. It's a contradiction. and it aligns perfectly with the Kremlin's rhetoric questioning Ukraine's legitimacy.
What's really fascinating, though, is how the framework goes way beyond a simple agreement to end the war.
Oh, absolutely. It ties peace in Ukraine to all these unrelated long-term global processes.
Like Russia's reintegration into the global economy, homework for the World Bank or the G8.
And there are even erroneous references to expired nuclear deals like START 1. It's bizarre.
Why do you think they included all that? Is it just messy drafting, or is this calculated?
It looks much more like calculated Russian manipulation by making the peace deal dependent on these long, drawn-out negotiations about global economics.
It gives Moscow long-term leverage.
Exactly. It lets Russia hold peace in Ukraine hostage to unrelated diplomatic wins. They can delay full compliance indefinitely if they don't get what they want on the world stage.
And structurally, the gap for consequences is massive. The document doesn't say what happens if Russia stalls or just walks away.
It's wide open to delay and manipulation. And on the critical issue of territory, the original document implied de facto recognition of Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk as Russian.
Permanently.
Permanently. The European counterproposal tried to soften that, suggesting negotiations start from the existing line of contact. But even then, point 22 is a trap.
Let me see. Both countries undertake not to change arrangements by force.
Right, but here's the kicker. If Ukraine breaches that commitment, it loses its undefined security guarantees.
So it locks Ukraine in a no-win scenario. Either you accept the current territorial losses forever, or you risk losing the little bit of paper-thin protection the treaty offers.
Lose-lose.
So moving from that flawed diplomacy to just pure military escalation, we have confirmation of a huge strategic move right near NATO's border.
And it was executed just as these peace talks were gaining momentum. It's not a coincidence.
Russia has been boasting about deploying the nuclear-capable Oreshnik IRBM, the intermediate-range ballistic missile, inside Belarus.
And this was confirmed by both Ukrainian and Belarusian officials in late December. This move dramatically raises tensions across the entire region.
Deploying a nuclear-capable system that close to NATO member states is a clear military escalation.
It's designed to pressure both Kyiv and Europe, to make them accept the horrible terms laid out in those peace proposals we were just talking about.
And at the same time, Russia continues its targeted strikes on civilian infrastructure.
We saw attacks on civilian port infrastructure in Black Sea ports like Pivdeny and Kornomorsk. It's aimed at disrupting logistics, complicating global shipping.
It's economic warfare. And in the occupied territories, they continue these attempts at cultural erasure, often with just deep insensitivity.
You mean the theater in Mariupol?
Yeah, Ukrainian authorities condemned Russia for reopening the Donetsk Academic Regional Drama Theater. This is the theater that was destroyed by a Russian airstrike in 2022.
Hundreds of people sheltering there were killed.
And now they're reopening it. The Ukrainian City Council called it singing and dancing on bones. This isn't just about military escalation. It's about erasing norms and degrading civilian life.
Which brings us to the shocking crisis in international humanitarian law.
This legislative escalation, this really shook the foundations of humanitarian law. The Mine Ban Treaty, the Ottawa Treaty, faced its most severe crisis ever this December in Geneva.
It's a truly grave threat to international norms, and is being driven by the pressure of this conflict. We saw 5 European states, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, all announced they were withdrawing.
Simultaneously. Yeah.
All citing the threat of Russian aggression. They argue they need anti-personnel mines for self-defense.
But the sources are clear. This undermines the whole point of the convention, abandoning humanitarian law just when it's needed most.
It's self-defeating. AP mines overwhelmingly harm civilians. But the true existential threat to the treaty came from Ukraine's move, not the withdrawals.
Ukraine, a treaty party, tried to suspend its obligations.
Yes, citing the Vienna Convention on the Laws of Treaties. And this raises the most important question for international law.
Which is?
If a state can just unilaterally suspend its humanitarian law obligations during wartime, well then every single convention designed to protect civilians, the Geneva Conventions, chemical weapons bans, all of it becomes vulnerable to the same logic.
It creates a precedent that lets states just discard the rules precisely when they're needed most.
Exactly. The outcome, thankfully, was a win for the rule of law.
Treaty defenders successfully invalidated Ukraine's move. They secured language in the final report saying the Mine Ban Treaty does not allow suspension.
Upholding that norm was critical. But look, compliance is still incredibly difficult. Russia is the main perpetrator. They're not even a party to the treaty.
And they will keep laying mines.
They will. And our sources note growing indications of continued use and production of anti-personnel mines by Ukrainian forces, despite their treaty status.
And that's complicated by the U.S. announcing it would transfer stockpiled AP mines to Ukraine.
It's a perfect storm. This whole situation just shows the extreme pressure that modern high-intensity conflict places on these international agreements.
So let's synthesize all of this. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener, as we close out 2025?
Well, first, the compounding human cost of the war is pushing Moscow toward increasingly risky moves at home. Compulsory mobilization, blatant information concealment.
And at the same time, the so-called peace framework is dangerously vague and structurally compromised. It seems designed to give Russia long-term geopolitical leverage, not secure an actual peace.
And regionally, the escalation just continues. We see it with missile deployments like the Oreshnik and the severe testing of fundamental international norms on civilian protection.
So you really have to consider the complexity here. You have to ask, when is a peace deal just another military strategy? Something designed to grant leverage and consolidate gains rather than actually stop the fighting?
The language in this 28-point proposal strongly suggests it's the former. And that is a very dangerous thought to sit with.
So here's a final thought for you to reflect on. If Russia is now resorting to concealing casualty data and mobilizing active reservists, which is a domestically dangerous move that breaks that social contract, what actual impact will the shift to a year-round conscription cycle have on domestic Russian stability and its military capacity as we move deeper into 2026? Will the constant militarization of civilian life be the policy that finally pushes back? You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.